Hi, welcome to Podpadstudios. I'm Master Maker, and today we are playing with fire. Now, quick shout out to one of our youngest members out there, Taylor. Taylor, do not do this at home. Watch from a distance, enjoy, but do not play with fire. Apparently, I know what I'm doing. Well, I think I know what I'm doing. No, I do know what I'm doing. I'm an expert. Anyway, right, what are we doing? So this is the missile launcher for the trailer system on the Dita. Now, why am I playing with fire? I can't launch missiles. Apparently, people get a bit upset when you go to public events and launch rockets. I don't see why they would get upset. I mean, I can't see a problem with setting off fireworks and making lots of loud bangs and firing rockets. But anyway, you can't. So what I've got to do is I've got to simulate the idea of the rocket firing. Now, the best way to do that, well, actually, the safest way to that would probably be with lots of LED lighting and those little flicker paper things, you know, that you see on really bad parties. Like that. They do that funny kind of noise. And they have little paper that flickers out the back and they put LEDs. That ain't going to work in the bright sunlight. So I decided the best way to do it is to blow things up. All right, so first breakage on the Dita. Basically, as you can see, that was a leaf spring, and that was supporting this wheel here, and that's what's left of the leaf spring. Now it's interesting how it's broken. If it had just been a straight break, then that's more than likely due to the spring problem. Now it's hard to see, but basically here, you can kind of just about see it in there. I've got two springs supporting on the leaf spring. Now, if the axle was in between the leaf springs, it would create a point that this could actually fail, because you basically got an axle pushing up in the middle and a spring here and a spring here, and that would be weak. But as you can see there, the whole axle acts on both springs. So that's not what's caused this problem. Also, it hasn't just broken, it's literally, if you look at it, it's like it's just completely twisted off, it's sheared off completely. And what has happened is this: I've put a new one in, I've built a new one and put a new one in there. What happens is these motors are only fixed at that point and that point. So when they accelerate, because the suspension can flex, it can basically move, the torque reaction from the motors isn't just causing this to move up and down, it's creating a twisting problem for it. So what I've done to solve that problem, I've put two torsion bars in. Now these torsion bars will actually now stop the motor under torque reaction twisting, if you see what I mean. And that means now the spring can't twist, but it can still act as a spring, and because of the way these are connected, it will still move independently. So that's that problem solved. One other problem, which is going to be harder to solve, comments below, is this. On the wheel, when the wheel came off, when obviously it dropped and it broke, you can see here the valves stick out. And here, the valve is gone. The valve has pulled itself inside the wheel. So somehow, I've got to turn the wheel, but how do I do that when I can't deflate the tyre because I can't get to the valve? Oops. Yeah, problem. Also, I think I'm getting a cold. Or it might just be cold. Might be back to my hibernation problem. Anyway, that's that crisis averted. These torsion bars should, they're aluminium bars, solve the problem. It stops the motors from twisting.
It still doesn't look like the leaf springs on the van.
They're exactly the same.
Really?
Except I've just got coils on them. So on the van, instead of having coils, we've got airbags.
But aren't coils at the end of the springs on the van?
No, so normally you don't mix coils and spring, and you don't mix leaf springs and coils. There's no point, because the leaf spring acts as the suspension. That's how it works.
Yes, that's how it works on the van.
The problem with these is I was having problems getting the adjusters because I'm setting the tension and everything. It was just as easy to put a spring in. So what we do on our truck, where the springs are, we have inflatable airbags.
But aren't the springs at the end of each of the leaves?
No, they're
designed, in the middle.
They're designed exactly like this.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that problem solved. I need to test it now and just see if it works. But I can't see. It's good. It's good that it's broken the way it broke, because I can see exactly why it broke where it did. It hasn't even broken, if you notice, it hasn't even broken across the holes where it attaches. So it is literally has twisted off. And you can almost see, if you look very carefully at the spring, you can see the spring's twisted. This stuff, this carbon steel is insanely strong. So for it to do that, I can't even bend that back. I can't even get close to bending that back. And you would think a thin bit of metal like that, I could just bend it back. It's just no way. So there's been quite a lot of twisting force, but these motors are quite powerful motors on these. Each of these is about 350 watts, these motors. So the torque in them is massive. Right, testing time. So how am I going to do that? So, right, in the framework here, I'm going to show you how this works. Now, the idea is, it's a very, very simple system. Now, I'm using here, as you can see, a very small gas cylinder. Now, the reason I'm using a very small gas cylinder, in fact, I'm not even going to use that gas cylinder. This is just a test gas cylinder. I'm going to be using one of these gas cylinders, which is even smaller than that gas cylinder. The reason I'm using these tiny little gas cylinders is what you can't do with gas cylinders is turn them on their side or store them upside down. Now, there's a very good reason for it. Inside a gas cylinder, there's liquid. And what happens is this liquid, if you like, the top section here in the cylinder, the liquid kind of vaporizes and it produces the gas. And when you open the valve and when you burn propane, because that's what's in here, it burns the gas. What you don't want to be doing though is turning it upside down and having the liquid go through the pipe, because now you're basically effectively burning liquid and creating a flamethrower, which is not a good idea. So there's lots of safety things here, as you can see. So we've got the gas cylinder, we've got the valve that attaches to the gas cylinder, which allows us to turn on the gas from the gas cylinder, which goes down a pipe here. We've got this little red thing here, and what that is here's one which is an oxygen one. This is called a flash arrestor, and you can see there's a little arrow on it. And the idea is it's simply a one-way valve. So the idea is when it's put in line here, it allows the gas to flow through, but here is the important bit. If for any reason the flame was able to come down this tube and go back into the gas cylinder, it would basically blow up the gas that's in the gas cylinder. The flash arrestor stops that happening. It doesn't allow anything to go past. The next bit in line, this thing here, is a solenoid. Now what this is just a switch. It basically turns the gas on or turns the gas off. So the valve can be turned on here. The gas will flow through to this point, and when this solenoid is activated, the gas flows through and comes out the end of the pipe. So basically that's how that works. That's very, very simple. This tube, obviously none of this is mocked. This is all mocked up at the moment. This will all be set up. This goes through, this rubber pipe here will go through to a metal pipe. Has to be metal because it'll have flames around it, to a very small little end, a little kind of hole in the end. I'm playing around with these little valves. The smaller the valve, the bigger the flame. It's that simple, really. That simply, at the moment, is just slotting into this bracket that I've made, which connects up to the pipe here, like that. Now when I basically open the solenoid, when I apply power to the solenoid here via a battery, the valve opens, the gas goes through, but how do you ignite the gas? Well, there's this object here, which does look a bit strange, but basically this is what's called a plasma igniter. Now, I don't know whether you can get a close-up on the end of this thing here, on this bit here, but when I apply power, well, not power, when I short circuit this, it will create, if you can see there, a little plasma arc. And that little arc will ignite the gas stream, like a spark on a spark plug, basically. So I'm going to put that in. That just basically bolts into this little assembly here. And when this is in place, that is going to now be, as you can see, in the stream or the flow of the gas jet. So it's the gas is going to come out of here, jet out here, effectively through past the spark here. Now I'm going to set this up. I'm going to show you how this works. Obviously it's not tuned, there's a lot to do here, but what we're going to do is, you need about 8 arms to do this. This is the only problem. Turn the gas on. So we've now got gas basically flowing through the system. What I'm going to do now is open and close the solenoid. So you can hear that on my mic. Can you hear the click there? from the solenoid. That means the gas solenoid is now open. I'm now going to put the spark in and we'll get a flame. I'm going to disconnect the solenoid and the gas goes off. Close the solenoid, activate the spark, and then basically there's my flame. Now, it won't stay on like that because that kind of looks silly. I think Mrs. Breaker described it as a Bunsen burner, which I'd like to know what her Bunsen burners look like at school. Anyway, Mrs. Breaker was probably one of those people at school when she played with Bunsen burners that threw things into them to make them go really weird. Another question from the floor.
Is it a special tube you're using?
No, so all the orange pipe is just a standard rubber butane pipe. So butane as a gas is corrosive, and you have to just be careful what pipes you put it through, otherwise it will break the pipes down. So do that again. Obviously the pipe at the end, this pipe, all of this assembly here, this is quite warm, it's quite nice, it's a bit chilly out here at the moment. All of this is all metal here at the ends. So there's nothing to burn here. This is just all metal. And obviously this will have the top on. It will also be complemented. Now, it's going to look a bit strange just to have a flame coming out the back. The idea is that the flame simulates the rocket engine starting up, firing. Obviously, I can't fire a rocket out of the other end. So once this thing lifts up, it will kind of lift up and it will be 5, 4, 3, ignition start. And then the flame will come out, look like the rocket engine is starting up. What we're also going to use is one of these. Now, it's not going to be this, but it's going to look exactly like, well, it's very, very similar to this. What this will do is this is going to, and this is going to be a lot more difficult to demo this. This is going to simulate the smoke effect that you get from the engine. Now, I'll give you an example quickly here. Smoke. So the idea is that when this runs, so I'll try and do this without setting fire to anything. As I said, it's quite difficult when you don't have enough arms, but there we go. Let's run the flame. In fact, let's close the solenoid off there. And then give you an idea. We'll have lots of smoke coming out like that, near it. So it will have the flame and then the smoke effect, sort of like this. Looking like the rocket engine is starting up. But obviously all of that will only go for a few seconds. So it won't be a continuous stream like this. The smoke will start, like the motors are starting up, and then you'll basically see the flame going, coming out through the smoke. And that's it, really. That's how it's going to work. It's very, very simple.
But like we say, kids, don't do this at home.
No, don't do this at home. So to be honest, this is just, as you can see here, this is just set up very, very simply. When all of this goes into the model, it then gets quite complicated because obviously the cylinder is going to be kept completely isolated from the flame source. We've got flash arrestors in between, so there's no way that the flame can get back. Obviously all of this piping, let me just take all this apart. You can see at the moment, this is just kind of like pipes everywhere. All of this is obviously all going to be cut properly, going through brass fittings, because this whole assembly, remember, raises up like this. It lifts as this kind of goes skywards to launch the rockets. Now, I have to route the piping underneath, so it's obviously have to be all done with brass fittings, all done properly. So that bit takes a little bit more doing. The ignition source obviously is important as well. It's not just going to be me stood there with a battery sticking 2 wires together. The idea is it will be run through a timer relay. So what will happen is that once a button is pressed on the radio, that will trigger the gas solenoid to close, and this will be on a timer relay for however long I decide to do this for. Once the timer relay starts, basically, remember, a relay is just a switch. Once the switch closes, it will close for a particular length of time. A secondary switch will close, causing the ignition source to start, which will ignite the flame. that will stay on for a certain period of time. But before all of that happens, the smoke system will have been triggered. And this will obviously be triggered before all of this is happening. Yeah. To push the smoke out, there will be fans at the end here. This will fill with smoke. The fans will push the smoke out. The flame will trigger and it will then ignite. So it all has to happen in the right order, and it happens to happen from me pressing one button. So it's all going to be done with electronics. And then all of those electronics, ideally, the power source for those electronics need to be independent of the truck that's pulling it. Because if the truck that was pulling it, if its battery source went down and it dropped below a certain point, there is a very minute risk that this could trigger on its own. So that can't be allowed to happen. So it has to have an independent power source, which then means the whole system is completely safe and nothing can go wrong. And obviously bear in mind, this is a tiny little flame. By the time we get this elevated up to this kind of point, the flame is only coming down here, and this is only going to be probably about, 20 to 25 centimetres from the ground. So there is simply no risk to anybody here. The only risk probably is to the grass, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, that's it. Playing with fire. Bit of a flame system. The next bit, as I said, is fine-tuning this to get the right flame coming out. Sorting out all the ducting to route the gas and to route the smoke. And then getting it mounted onto the actual frame. So, there we have it. Mrs. Breakup will not approve.